Isabella Rose stood outside the glass doors of Le Bernardin, her hands trembling as she clutched the small purse her mother had insisted she carry. The restaurant's elegant facade reflected the busy New York street, but all she could see was her own nervous expression staring back at her. At 22, she had never imagined she would be meeting a complete stranger for what her parents called a wonderful opportunity. Her father's construction business had been failing for months. Bills piled up on the kitchen table like autumn leaves, and her mother's worried whispers filled their small Brooklyn apartment every night. When Vincent Sterling's representative contacted them with a proposal, her parents saw it as divine intervention. Isabella saw it as the end of her freedom. Vincent Sterling was a name everyone knew. The 34-year-old tech genius had built a software empire from his college dorm room and was now worth billions. His face graced magazine covers, and his company's innovations changed how the world communicated. What the magazines didn't mention was his loneliness or his desire for something real in a world full of artificial connections. As Isabella finally pushed through the restaurant's heavy doors, the maître d' immediately recognized her from the description he had been given. He led her through tables filled with New York's elite to a private dining room where Vincent waited. When she first saw him, she was surprised by how normal he looked. No crown, no golden suit, just a man in a well-tailored navy jacket reading something on his phone. Vincent looked up as she approached, and their eyes met for the first time. He had expected someone polished and confident, perhaps someone who understood the unspoken rules of high society. Instead, he found himself looking at a young woman whose genuine nervousness was refreshing in a world where everyone performed. For his attention, "You must be Isabella," he said, standing to pull out her chair. His voice was softer than she had expected, lacking the commanding tone she had imagined a billionaire would possess. "Yes, sir," she replied quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. The formal address made Vincent pause. When was the last time someone had called him sir without wanting something from him? The first hour of their dinner was filled with careful conversation. Vincent asked about her studies at the local community college where she was pursuing an art degree against her parents' wishes. They wanted her to study something practical, something that would guarantee a steady income. Art, they argued, was a luxury their family couldn't afford. As Isabella spoke about her passion for painting, something in her voice changed. The nervousness faded, replaced by an excitement that made her eyes light up. She described how colors could tell stories, how a single brushstroke could capture emotions that words never could. Vincent found himself genuinely interested, asking questions that went beyond mere politeness. "I've never met anyone who talks about art the way you do," he admitted, as their main course arrived. "Most people in my world discuss art as investments, not as something that moves them." Isabella looked down at her plate, suddenly remembering where she was and why she was there. This wasn't a casual dinner between friends. This was a business meeting disguised as a social encounter. Her parents had been clear about what was expected of her. "My parents told me about your proposal," she said quietly, her cheeks flushing. "Pink," they said. "You're looking for someone to marry." Vincent set down his fork, studying her face carefully. He had met with several young women over the past months, all introduced by family, friends, or business associates. Each had been beautiful, educated, and completely calculating in their approach to winning his affection. Isabella was different. She seemed almost afraid of him, not excited by his wealth. "What did they tell you exactly?" he asked, his business instincts recognizing that there might be more to this story than he had been told. Isabella's honesty surprised them both. She explained how her father's business was drowning in debt, how medical bills from her grandmother's recent illness had emptied their savings, and how her parents saw this arrangement as the answer to all their problems. She spoke without anger or resentment, just a quiet acceptance that made Vincent's chest tighten with an unfamiliar emotion. "And what do you think about all this?" he asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "I think I don't have much choice," she replied, meeting his eyes for the first time all evening. "But I also think you seem like a kind person, which is more than I had hoped for." The simplicity of her statement hit Vincent harder than any passionate declaration of love could have. Here was someone who wasn't trying to impress him or win him over. She was simply being honest about an impossible situation. As dessert arrived, Vincent made a decision that surprised even himself. Instead of discussing marriage arrangements or timelines, he asked Isabella about her dreams. What would she do if money wasn't an issue? Where would she travel? What kind of art would she create? Her answers revealed a depth of imagination that had been suppressed by years of practical concerns. She spoke of painting landscapes in Tuscany, of studying the masters in Paris, of opening a small gallery where unknown artists could display their work. Her voice grew stronger with each word, and Vincent realized he was seeing the real Isabella for the first time. When the evening ended, Vincent walked her to the street where his driver waited. Instead of making immediate plans or discussing contracts, he handed her a business card with his personal number written on the back. "I'd like to see some of your paintings," he said. "Would you be willing to show them to me?" Isabella nodded, still unsure what to make of this unexpected turn. As the car pulled away, she stood on the sidewalk holding the card, wondering if she had just experienced the most unusual business meeting of all time, or something else entirely. Vincent watched her through the rear window until she disappeared into the subway entrance. For the first time in years, he looked forward to tomorrow. Not because of a business deal or financial opportunity, but because he would see Isabella again. Something had begun that evening, something neither of them had planned or expected. Arranged meeting had become something real, and both of their worlds were about to change in ways they never could have imagined. 3 days after their dinner, Isabella found herself standing in the marble lobby of Sterling Tower, clutching a worn canvas bag that contained her most precious possessions, her paintings. The security guard had been expecting her, and within minutes, she was whisking upward in a private elevator toward the penthouse that occupied the building's top 3 floors. Vincent had called her the morning after their dinner, his voice carrying a warmth that made her stomach flutter in ways she didn't understand. He had asked if she would join him for coffee so he could see her artwork. But when she mentioned she didn't have a car to transport her larger canvases, he had simply said he would send a car. What arrived was not just a car, but a small moving truck with professional art handlers now. As the elevator doors opened directly into Vincent's home, Isabella stepped into a world that seemed lifted from a magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of Central Park, while modern furniture in soft grays and whites created an atmosphere of sophisticated comfort. Yet despite the obvious wealth displayed in every carefully chosen piece, the space felt surprisingly warm and lived in. Vincent appeared from what she assumed was his office. His tie loosened and sleeves rolled up, looking more relaxed than he had at the restaurant. "Isabella, thank you for coming. Hope the transport service was helpful." She nodded, still somewhat overwhelmed by the grandeur around her. "It was very kind of you to arrange all that. I've never had my paintings moved so carefully." He led her to a spacious area near the windows where easels had been set up. "I thought the natural light here would be perfect for viewing your work. Would you mind if we started with whatever piece you're most proud of?" Isabella's hands shook slightly as she unwrapped her favorite painting, a street scene from her neighborhood, showing children playing in the spray of a fire hydrant, while their mothers watched from stoops. The colors were vibrant despite the urban setting, capturing joy in the midst of struggle. Vincent studied the painting in silence for several minutes, its expression unreadable. Isabella's heart sank, assuming his quiet meant disappointment. In her world, silence usually meant judgment. "This is extraordinary," he finally said, his voice filled with genuine amazement. "The way you've captured the light, the expressions on the children's faces, it's like I can hear their laughter." Isabella looked up at him in surprise. "Really? You're not just being polite?" Vincent turned to face her fully. "Isabella, I've attended gallery openings where single pieces sold for millions of dollars, and none of them moved me the way this painting does. You have a rare gift." As they moved through her other works, landscapes painted from memory, portraits of her neighbors, abstract pieces that captured emotions rather than images, Vincent's appreciation became increasingly evident. He asked thoughtful questions about her techniques and inspiration, listening to her answers with the same intensity he brought to business negotiations. "I have to ask you something," Vincent said, as they finished viewing the last painting. "With talent like this, why aren't you in a prestigious art school? Why aren't galleries fighting to represent you?" Isabella's smile faded slightly. Those things cost money we don't have. Community college was already a stretch for my family. They think art is a nice hobby, but not a real career. Vincent was quiet for a moment, processing this information. In his world, talent was cultivated and invested in. The idea that Isabella's gift was being wasted due to financial constraints bothered him more than he expected. "Would you like to stay for dinner?" he asked. "I mean, if you don't have other plans. I could have something delivered, or we could go out if you prefer." Isabella glanced toward the windows where the sun was beginning to set over the city. "I should probably get home. My parents will worry if I'm too late." "Of course," Vincent said, though his disappointment was evident. "But before you go, I want to show you something." He led her to another room she hadn't seen yet, his personal study. The walls were lined with books, but what caught Isabella's attention were the paintings. Not expensive masterpieces, but simple, beautiful works that seemed chosen for their emotional impact rather than their market value. "I started collecting these a few years ago," Vincent explained. "Not as investments, but because they made me feel something. Most people don't understand that distinction." Isabella moved closer to examine a small landscape that reminded her of her grandmother's descriptions of the countryside where she had grown up. "They're beautiful. They feel honest." "That's exactly the word I would use," Vincent said, standing beside her. "Honest. Like your work." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment before Isabella's phone buzzed with a text from her mother, asking when she would be home. Reality intruded on the magical afternoon they had shared. "I really should go," she said reluctantly. As Vincent walked her back to the elevator, he seemed to be wrestling with something. Finally, as the elevator doors opened, he spoke. "Isabella, I want to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. If your family's financial situation wasn't a factor, if you could make any choice about your future without worrying about money, what would you choose?" The question caught her off guard. No one had ever asked her what she wanted without considering practical limitations. "I would paint," she said without hesitation. "I would study with masters, travel to see the great works in person, and maybe someday open a gallery where artists like me could show their work regardless of their background." Vincent nodded as if her answer confirmed something he had already suspected. "And marriage? If you could choose freely, what would you want?" Isabella's cheeks flushed, but she maintained eye contact. "I would want to marry someone who saw me as more than just a solution to a problem. Someone who cared about my dreams, not just my usefulness." The elevator had been waiting patiently, but neither of them moved to enter it. "Isabella," Vincent said carefully, "what if I told you that helping your family financially didn't have to be connected to marriage? What if those could be separate things entirely?" She looked at him with confusion. "I don't understand." "I'm saying that I could help your father's business and your grandmother's medical bills without any expectations. No strings attached. Could pursue your art, go to any school you wanted, and make your own choices about your future." Isabella's eyes widened. "Why would you do that? We barely know each other." Vincent smiled, and for the first time since she had met him, it reached his eyes completely. "Because in one afternoon, you've shown me something I thought I'd lost. The ability to see beauty in simple, honest things. Because your talent deserves to be nurtured, not sacrificed. And because I've never met anyone who made me want to be generous just for the joy of giving." Tears began to form in Isabella's eyes. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about it," Vincent replied. "Say you'll have dinner with me tomorrow night, not because you have to, but because you want to." As the elevator doors finally closed between them, Isabella pressed her face to the cold metal, her mind reeling from the conversation. For the first time in her life, someone was offering her true choice. The weight of that gift was almost overwhelming. Vincent remained standing in his hallway long after the elevator had descended, wondering what had just happened to his carefully ordered world. He had met Isabella to discuss a business arrangement and instead found himself making offers that had nothing to do with business and everything to do with an unfamiliar feeling growing in his chest. Neither of them slept well that night, processing the possibility that their unusual meeting might be leading to something neither had expected but both were beginning to hope for. Isabella arrived at Vincent's building the next evening wearing a simple blue dress she had borrowed from her roommate. Her heart raced as she rode the elevator up, not from nervousness this time, but from anticipation. She had spent the entire day thinking about Vincent's offer. And more importantly, it's about the way he had looked at her paintings with genuine appreciation. Vincent greeted her at the elevator doors, and she immediately noticed he looked different. Gone was the business attire, replaced by casual jeans and a soft gray sweater that made his eyes appear warmer. He seemed younger, more relaxed, as if he had shed some invisible armor. "I hope you don't mind, but I thought we could eat on the terrace tonight," he said, leading her through the apartment 2 French doors she hadn't noticed before. "The weather is perfect, and I wanted to show you something special." The terrace was transformed into an intimate dining space with soft lighting and a table set for 2. But what took Isabella's breath away wasn't the elegant setup, or the spectacular view of the city lights beginning to twinkle below. It was the easel positioned near the railing, holding a blank canvas and surrounded by professional art supplies. "Thought you might want to paint the sunset," Vincent explained, watching her expression carefully. "I know it's presumptuous, but I wanted to see you work." Isabella approached the easel slowly, running her fingers over brushes that were finer than any she had ever owned. "These supplies must have cost more than my entire collection." "They're yours," Vincent said simply. "Regardless of what you decide about anything else, they're yours." As they shared dinner, Isabella found herself telling Vincent stories she had never shared with anyone. She spoke about her childhood dreams of becoming an artist, about the teacher who had first encouraged her talent, and about the painful day she had almost given up painting entirely when her father called it a waste of time. Vincent listened with the same intense focus he brought to business meetings, but his questions came from genuine curiosity rather than strategic thinking. He wanted to understand not just what she thought, but how she felt about the world around her. "I have a confession," Vincent said as they finished their meal. "I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday, and I realized I wasn't being completely honest with you." Isabella's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" "When I said I could help your family with no strings attached, I made it sound purely altruistic, but the truth is I would be getting something out of it too." Isabella waited, afraid to hear what he might say next. Vincent stood and walked to the railing, looking out over the city. "I've spent the last 10 years building my company, acquiring wealth, accumulating things I thought would make me happy. But I've been empty, Isabella, surrounded by people who want things from me, attending events where every conversation is calculated, living in a world where everything has a price tag, including relationships." He turned back to face her. "Meeting you, seeing your art, watching you talk about things you're passionate about. It's reminded me what it feels like to connect with someone real. So yes, helping your family would be generous, but it would also be selfish. I would be doing it because I don't want to lose the chance to know you better." Isabella felt tears forming in her eyes. "Vincent, I don't know how to be in your world. I don't know the rules or the expectations. I'm just a girl from Brooklyn who paints pictures." Vincent crossed the terrace to where she sat, kneeling beside her chair so they were at eye level. "Isabella, I don't want you to be in my world. I want to be in yours. I want to see the city through your eyes, understand beauty the way you do. Remember what it feels like to create something meaningful?" The sincerity in his voice was undeniable. Isabella reached out tentatively, touching his hand with her fingertips. "What are you really asking me?" "I'm asking if you would consider letting me court you properly," Vincent said, his voice soft, but steady. "Not because of any arrangement between our families, not because of financial pressure, but because I think we could create something beautiful together. I'm asking if you would let me take you to art museums and galleries, if you would teach me to see paintings the way you do, if you would let me support your dreams while you figure out what you want." Isabella was quiet for a long moment, processing the magnitude of what he was offering. "And if I decide this isn't what I want, if I choose to pursue my art alone, then I'll still help your family, and I'll still consider myself lucky to have known you," Vincent replied without hesitation. "Your choice has to be free, Isabella. Otherwise it's not really a choice at all." As the sun set completely and the city lights created a sparkling backdrop, Isabella moved to the easel. She began to paint, her brushstrokes confident and sure. Vincent watched in fascination as colors blended and shapes emerged on the canvas. She wasn't painting the cityscape before them, but something from memory, a small flower growing through a crack in concrete. "It's beautiful," Vincent said, when she finally stepped back from the finished piece. "What inspired it?" Isabella smiled, her eyes bright with unshed tears of hope rather than sadness. "It's what you've given me, the possibility of something beautiful growing in an unexpected place." Vincent understood immediately. The relationship was like that flower, unlikely, perhaps fragile, but undeniably real and beautiful in its eye. Probitate. As the evening ended, Isabella made her decision. She would accept Vincent's help for her family, but more importantly, she would accept his invitation to explore what might grow between them, not because she had to, but because for the first time in her life she wanted to. 3 months later, Isabella stood in the main gallery of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, holding Vincent's hand as they stood before a Monet painting she had only seen in textbooks. She was enrolled in the most prestigious art program in the city. Her father's business was thriving with Vincent's investment. Her grandmother's medical bills were a worry of the past. But the most beautiful change was the way Vincent looked at the world now. Through Isabella's eyes, he had learned to see art as more than investment opportunities, to value creativity over productivity, to understand that the most meaningful things in life couldn't be bought or sold. Their love story hadn't followed any traditional path. It had begun with an arrangement that neither wanted, survived honest conversations about impossible choices, blossomed into something neither had expected, but both had learned to cherish as they walked through the museum together, planning their future and dreaming about the gallery they would open together, where unknown artists could display their work regardless of their background. Both Isabella and Vincent knew they had found something rarer than wealth or talent. They had found a love built on mutual respect, shared dreams, and the courage to choose each other freely. The shy girl from Brooklyn and the lonely billionaire had created their own masterpiece, painted not on canvas, but in the choices they made, each day to see the best in each other and build something beautiful together. Their story was proof that sometimes the most unexpected beginnings can lead to the most extraordinary endings. In a world where everything seemed to have a price, they had discovered that the most valuable things, love, respect, and genuine connection, were still absolutely free, available to anyone brave enough to choose authenticity over convenience, and generous enough to give their heart without guarantee of return. Their love story continued to unfold each day, as beautiful and unpredictable as Isabella's paintings, as solid and enduring as Vincent's commitment to seeing the world through her eyes, and as hopeful as a flower growing through concrete against all odds.